When Jennifer Hayes found the hidden letter in cell block D, her hands started shaking. The inmates sitting in that cell had been there for 15 years, but according to the document she was holding, he should never have been arrested in the first place. What she discovered next would expose a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of power and put her own life in danger. Stay with me until the very end, because this story will challenge everything you think you know about justice, courage, and the price of doing what's right. If stories like this move you, please hit that like button and subscribe to Heart Told Stories for more incredible true narratives. Now, let's begin. Jennifer Hayes was exactly the kind of prison guard the system loved. At 34 years old, she had spent 8 years working at Riverside State Penitentiary without a single complaint on her record. She was punctual, professional, and possessed the rare ability to maintain authority without cruelty. Where other guards saw criminals and troublemakers, Jennifer saw human beings who had made mistakes. She had grown up in a law enforcement family. Her father had been a police officer for 25 years, and her older brother worked as a detective in the city. They had instilled in her a deep respect for the justice system, and the belief that good people doing honest work could make a difference. Jennifer carried that belief with her every day as she walked the cold corridors of Riverside. The prison housed over 2,000 inmates, ranging from petty thieves to violent offenders serving life sentences. Jennifer worked the day shift in cell block D, a medium security wing that held mostly non-violent offenders. She knew many of them by name, understood their stories, and treated each one with basic human dignity. This approach had earned her respect from both inmates and fellow guards alike. But there was one guard who didn't appreciate Jennifer's methods. Marcus Thompson had been at Riverside for 15 years and believed in a different philosophy: control through fear. He mocked Jennifer's compassionate approach, calling her soft and naive. The tension between them had been building for months, though Jennifer tried her best to avoid confrontation. On a Tuesday morning in October, Jennifer arrived for her shift at 6:30, just as she did every day. The autumn air was crisp, and her breath formed small clouds as she walked from her car to the prison entrance. She went through the usual security protocols, locked her personal belongings in her locker, and prepared for the morning count. Cell block D was unusually quiet that morning. As Jennifer made her rounds, checking that each inmate was accounted for, she noticed something different about cell 47. The inmate there, Daniel Morrison, was sitting on his bunk with his head in his hands. Daniel was 38 years old, though prison had aged him beyond his years. He had been at Riverside for 15 years, serving a 25-year sentence for armed robbery and assault. Jennifer had always found Daniel to be one of the quieter inmates. He never caused trouble, never got into fights, and spent most of his time in the prison library. There was something about him that didn't quite fit the profile of a violent criminal. His eyes carried a sadness that seemed deeper than regret. It looked more like profound injustice. That morning, as Jennifer approached his cell for the count, Daniel looked up at her with an expression she had never seen before. It was desperate, urgent, like a man who had been holding his breath for 15 years and was finally running out of air. "Officer Hayes," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to tell you something I should have told someone a long time ago." Jennifer paused. Inmates often tried to engage guards in conversation, seeking attention or attempting manipulation. She had learned to be cautious about getting drawn into their stories, but something in Daniel's voice made her stop. "What is it, Morrison?" she asked, maintaining her professional tone while allowing a hint of genuine concern to show through. Daniel glanced down the corridor, making sure no other guards were within earshot. "I shouldn't be here," he said, his hands trembling slightly. "I never should have been arrested. I'm innocent, Officer Hayes, and I can prove it." Jennifer had heard this before. Nearly every inmate at Riverside claimed innocence at some point. It was a natural response to incarceration, a psychological defense mechanism that helped them cope with their circumstances. She prepared to give Daniel the standard response about taking concerns through proper legal channels. But then Daniel said something that changed everything. "There's a letter," he whispered, "hidden behind the loose brick in the corner of my cell. It's from Detective Richard Foster. He wrote it 3 years ago, right before he died. In that letter he confesses that he fabricated evidence in my case. He names the people who pressured him to do it, and explains why. Officer Hayes, that letter proves I've spent 15 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit." Jennifer felt her heart rate quicken. This was different. This was specific, detailed, and verifiable. If you have evidence like that, why haven't you brought it forward? She asked. Daniel's expression darkened. Because the people who put me here are still in power. Because Detective Foster was threatened into silence, and even on his deathbed, he was too afraid to make the letter public. Because I'm just another inmate, and who's going to believe me? I've tried to get lawyers to listen, but without the physical evidence, it's just my word against the system. Jennifer knew she should walk away. Getting involved in an inmate's case, especially one making such serious allegations, was dangerous territory. It could cost her job, her reputation, maybe even her safety. But something about Daniel's desperation felt genuine. Why are you telling me this now? She asked. Because tomorrow they're transferring me to Blackwood Maximum Security. Someone found out about the letter. I don't know how, but I overheard Marcus Thompson talking to the warden yesterday. They're moving me before I can do anything with the evidence. Once I'm in Blackwood, the letter will disappear, and so will my last chance at proving my innocence. Jennifer's mind raced. Marcus Thompson, the guard who hated her methods, who believed in controlling inmates through intimidation. If he was involved in covering up evidence, that explained a lot about his hostility toward her compassionate approach. Show me the letter, Jennifer heard herself saying, surprising even herself with the words. Daniel's eyes widened with hope and fear. You'll look at it? You'll actually read it? Show me where it is. If what you're saying is true, I need to see the evidence. Daniel stood up and walked to the back corner of his cell. He pointed to a spot near the floor where the brick wall showed signs of age and deterioration. Third brick from the corner, second row up. It's loose. The letter is wrapped in plastic behind it. Jennifer glanced down the corridor. The morning count was almost complete, and soon other guards would be making their rounds. If she was going to do this, it had to be now. She pulled on the brick, and it came away easily, revealing a small cavity in the wall. Inside was a plastic-wrapped package, exactly as Daniel had described. Jennifer's hands shook as she pulled it out and carefully unwrapped it. The letter was handwritten on official police department stationery, dated 3 years earlier. The handwriting was shaky, suggesting it had been written by someone in poor health. Jennifer began to read, and with each line, her sense of reality began to shift. To whom it may concern, the letter began. My name is Detective Richard Foster, and I am writing this confession because I can no longer carry the weight of what I have done. 15 years ago, I arrested Daniel Morrison for armed robbery and assault of Michael Chen. I testified in court that I had witnessed Daniel fleeing the scene with the weapon. This testimony was the primary evidence that led to his conviction. I am writing now to confess that this testimony was false. I did not witness Daniel at the scene. In fact, I have reason to believe Daniel Morrison was not involved in the crime at all. Jennifer's breath caught in her throat. She continued reading, her eyes scanning faster as the implications became clear. I was pressured by Captain William Reeves and District Attorney Robert Chandler to secure a conviction in the Chen case. Michael Chen was the nephew of Congressman Thomas Chen, and there was enormous political pressure to solve the case quickly. Daniel Morrison fit the profile. He had a minor juvenile record and lived in the area where the crime occurred. Captain Reeves told me that if I didn't get a conviction, my career was over. D.A. Chandler made it clear that they needed someone to pay for the crime, and Daniel was convenient. The letter went on to detail how evidence had been fabricated, how witness statements had been coached, and how Daniel's public defender had been deliberately given incomplete information. It described a conspiracy that involved multiple levels of law enforcement and the justice system, all working together to convict an innocent man, because it was politically expedient. I have lived with this guilt for 15 years, the letter concluded. It has destroyed my health, my marriage, and my peace of mind. I tried several times to come forward, but each time I was threatened by people who have too much to lose if the truth comes out. I am dying now, and I can no longer remain silent. I am leaving this confession with Daniel Morrison in the hope that someone with courage will help him seek justice. May God forgive me for what I have done. The letter was signed by Detective Richard Foster and dated March 15, 3 years earlier. Jennifer stood frozen, the letter trembling in her hands. This was real. This was documented evidence of a conspiracy to convict an innocent man. And if what Foster had written was true, the people responsible were still in positions of power. Now do you believe me? Daniel asked quietly. Jennifer looked at him. Really looked at him for the first time. She saw a man who had lost 15 years of his life, who had been betrayed by the very system that was supposed to protect him. She saw the weight of injustice in his eyes, the exhaustion of fighting a battle no one would help him win. "I believe you," she said softly, "and I'm going to help you." Those 6 words would change both of their lives forever. Because Jennifer Hayes was about to learn that doing the right thing often comes with a price that few people are willing to pay. She carefully rewrapped the letter and placed it back in its hiding spot, replacing the brick to make it appear undisturbed. Her mind was already racing with plans, considering options, calculating risks, but one thing was certain: she couldn't let Daniel be transferred to Blackwood tomorrow. Once he was moved, the letter would disappear, and with it any chance of justice. "Listen to me carefully," Jennifer said in a low voice. "I need you to trust me. Don't tell anyone else about this conversation. Act normal. I'm going to figure out how to handle this, but I need time." "Time is exactly what I don't have," Daniel replied. "The transfer order is for 6 a.m. tomorrow." Jennifer checked her watch. She had less than 24 hours to decide what to do with information that could destroy careers, expose corruption, and possibly put her own life in danger. As she walked away from cell 47 to continue her rounds, she felt the weight of an impossible choice settling on her shoulders. By lunchtime, Jennifer had made her decision. She couldn't go through official channels. Foster's letter made it clear that the corruption went too high up. She needed help from someone outside the system, someone she could trust absolutely. During her lunch break, Jennifer drove to a coffee shop 3 miles from the prison. She pulled out her phone and made a call she had been avoiding for 2 years. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. "Sarah Chen speaking." "Sarah, it's Jennifer Hayes. I know we haven't talked since the divorce, but I need your help. It's important." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Sarah Chen was Jennifer's ex-wife, an investigative journalist for the city newspaper. Their marriage had ended badly 2 years earlier, partly because Jennifer's dedication to her job had left little room for their relationship. They had barely spoken since the divorce was finalized. "Jennifer, what's going on? I can't explain over the phone. Can you meet me today? It's urgent." Another pause. Then the old diner on 5th Street. 1 hour. Jennifer arrived at the diner early and chose a booth in the back corner where they could talk privately. When Sarah walked in, Jennifer was struck by how much she had missed seeing her. Sarah's dark hair was shorter now, and she looked more confident, more self-assured than Jennifer remembered. They exchanged awkward greetings before Jennifer got straight to the point. She told Sarah everything. About Daniel Morrison, about Detective Foster's confession letter, about the conspiracy to convict an innocent man. As she spoke, she watched Sarah's expression change from skepticism to concern to outright shock. "Do you have the letter?" Sarah asked when Jennifer finished. "I memorized the key details, but I left it where it was hidden. If it disappears from the prison, Daniel loses his only proof." Sarah pulled out a notebook and started taking notes. "Jennifer, do you understand what you're involving yourself in? If what this letter says is true, you're talking about exposing corruption that involves a police captain, a district attorney, and possibly a congressman. These are powerful people who have already proven they're willing to destroy lives to protect themselves." "I know," Jennifer said quietly. "But what am I supposed to do? Let an innocent man rot in maximum security while I go home every night, knowing I could have helped him?" Sarah studied her ex-wife's face, seeing a determination she recognized from their time together. "You're really going to do this, aren't you?" "I have to, but I can't do it alone. I need someone who knows how to investigate, who has connections in the media, who can help me expose this without getting Daniel or myself killed in the process." Sarah closed her notebook and looked Jennifer directly in the eyes. "If I help you with this, and if what you're saying is true, this story could be the biggest break of my career. But I need to be honest with you. I'm not doing this for professional reasons. I'm doing it because despite everything that happened between us, I know you wouldn't ask for my help unless you were absolutely certain this was right." Relief flooded through Jennifer. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. First, I need to verify some of this information. Give me everything you remember from that letter. Names, dates, specific allegations. I'm going to start digging into these people's backgrounds, looking for any previous complaints, any patterns of misconduct. For the next hour, Jennifer recounted every detail she could remember from Detective Foster's confession. Sarah's pen flew across the pages of her notebook, occasionally stopping to ask clarifying questions or request specific details. "This Captain William Reeves," Sarah said, "has he had any other questionable cases?" "I don't know, but Marcus Thompson, the guard who's been pushing for Daniel's transfer, he used to be in the police department before he came to work at the prison. I wonder if there's a connection." Sarah made a note. "I'll look into it." "What about the victim, Michael Chen? What do we know about him?" According to Foster's letter, he was the nephew of Congressman Thomas Chen. The crime happened 15 years ago, so Michael would have been in his 20s. "I'm not sure what happened to him after the attack. I'll research that too. If Michael Chen survived, he might be willing to talk. If the real perpetrator was never caught, the case might still be open." As they wrapped up their conversation, Sarah reached across the table and squeezed Jennifer's hand briefly. "Be careful. If these people even suspect you know about that letter, you could be in serious danger." "I know. That's why we need to move fast. Daniel's transfer is scheduled for 6 a.m. tomorrow. Can you delay it? File some kind of paperwork that would hold up the transfer." Jennifer thought for a moment. "Maybe. I could report that Daniel seems mentally unstable, request a psychiatric evaluation. That would put a temporary hold on the transfer, while they assess whether he's fit to move. It might buy us a few days." "Do it. I'll use that time to verify as much of this information as I can. If Foster's letter is legitimate, there should be records, inconsistencies in the case file, something that corroborates his confession." They left the diner separately, like spies conducting a clandestine operation. As Jennifer drove back to the prison, she felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She was doing something dangerous, possibly career-ending, but for the first time in her 8 years as a prison guard, she felt like she was truly serving justice. When she returned to Riverside, Jennifer filed the paperwork requesting a psychiatric evaluation for Daniel Morrison, citing behavioral changes and concerns about his mental state. The request went to Warden Patricia Morrison, a stern woman who ran Riverside with iron discipline, but who also, Jennifer hoped, would take mental health concerns seriously. The warden approved the evaluation, and Daniel's transfer was postponed pending the psychiatrist's assessment. Jennifer had bought them 3 days, maybe 4 if the evaluation took longer than expected. It wasn't much time, but it would have to be enough. That evening, as Jennifer's shift ended, Marcus Thompson cornered her in the guard's locker room. He was a large man, over 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and a permanent scowl. He stepped into Jennifer's path, forcing her to stop. "I heard you put a hold on the Morrison transfer," he said, his voice low and threatening. "He's showing signs of psychological distress. I followed protocol and requested an evaluation." "That's interesting timing, considering the transfer was supposed to happen tomorrow." Jennifer met his gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated. "If you have a problem with my decision, take it up with the warden." She approved the evaluation. Marcus stepped closer, invading her personal space. "You need to be very careful, Hayes. Morrison is not the innocent victim you might think he is. There are things about his case you don't understand, and sticking your nose where it doesn't belong could get you hurt." "Is that a threat?" "It's advice, from someone who's been around a lot longer than you have." Jennifer pushed past him and left the locker room, her heart pounding. Marcus's words confirmed what she had suspected. He knew about the conspiracy, or at least knew enough to want Daniel transferred before questions could be asked. Over the next 3 days, Jennifer and Sarah worked in parallel. Sarah spent her time researching the original case, tracking down witnesses, and investigating the backgrounds of Captain Reeves, D.A. Chandler, and Congressman Chen. Jennifer maintained her normal routine at the prison, while quietly gathering any additional information that might help Daniel's case. The psychiatrist's evaluation of Daniel took place on the 3rd day. Dr. Helen Martinez spent 2 hours interviewing Daniel, and Jennifer waited anxiously for the results. If Dr. Martinez determined that Daniel was mentally unstable, he would be moved to the psychiatric ward instead of transferred to Blackwood. But if she cleared him as mentally competent, the transfer would proceed immediately. That afternoon, Jennifer was called to Warden Morrison's office. The warden sat behind her desk, Dr. Martinez report in front of her, her expression unreadable. Officer Hayes, I've reviewed Dr. Martinez's evaluation of inmate Morrison. She found no evidence of psychological distress or mental instability. In fact, she noted that Morrison seems remarkably well adjusted, given his circumstances. Can you explain why you reported concerns about his mental state? Jennifer had prepared for this question. I observed behavioral changes, Warden. He seemed agitated, made unusual statements. I thought it was better to be cautious. The warden studied Jennifer's face for a long moment. Dr. Martinez suggested that Morrison might have been putting on a performance during your observation, possibly to delay his transfer. Do you think that's possible? It's possible, Jennifer admitted, because denying it would seem suspicious. The transfer to Blackwood will proceed tomorrow at 6 a.m. Make sure Morrison is ready. Jennifer's heart sank, but she kept her expression neutral. Yes, Warden. As she left the office, Jennifer immediately called Sarah. We're out of time. The transfer is back on for tomorrow morning. Tell me you found something. Sarah's voice on the other end was excited. More than something. Jennifer, I found Michael Chen. He's alive and willing to talk, and what he told me changes everything. They agreed to meet that evening at Sarah's apartment. When Jennifer arrived, she found Sarah surrounded by documents, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes covering every surface of her living room. Michael Chen is 43 years old now, Sarah began. He owns a small restaurant downtown. When I contacted him and told him I was investigating his case, he agreed to meet me. Jennifer, Michael Chen doesn't believe Daniel Morrison attacked him. Jennifer sat down, stunned. What? Michael told me he never got a good look at his attacker. It happened late at night in a parking garage. Someone came up behind him, hit him over the head, and took his wallet and phone. He was unconscious when the police found him. When he woke up in the hospital, the police told him they had arrested Daniel Morrison, and that he should identify him in a lineup. And did he? He says he wasn't sure. The police showed him a lineup, and he picked Daniel because Detective Foster told him they had other evidence proving Daniel was the attacker. Michael says Foster assured him they had the right guy, and Michael wanted to trust the police. But over the years, Michael started having doubts. He tried to reach out to Morrison's lawyer several times, but he never got a response. Jennifer felt anger rising in her chest. So Michael was manipulated too. They used him to build their case against Daniel. It gets worse. I also tracked down the original public defender assigned to Daniel's case, Kevin Martinez. He's retired now, but he remembered the Morrison case clearly. He told me he always felt something was off about it. The prosecution had evidence he never saw until the trial. Witnesses changed their statements, and whenever he tried to dig deeper, he hit bureaucratic walls. He believes Daniel was railroaded, but by the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. Sarah handed Jennifer another document. This is a list of other cases handled by Captain Reeves and D.A. Chandler around the same time as Daniel's trial. I found at least 3 other convictions that have since been questioned or overturned due to evidence tampering or witness coercion. These men have a pattern of prioritizing convictions over truth. Jennifer's hands shook as she looked through the evidence Sarah had compiled. This is enough. This proves Foster's letter was telling the truth. We need to go public with this. Not yet, Sarah said. If we release this story now, before we have the physical letter, the people involved will deny everything. They'll discredit Michael. They'll discredit Foster's confession as fake, and they'll bury the whole thing. We need that letter, Jennifer. Without it, this is all just allegations. The letter is in Daniel's cell. If he gets transferred tomorrow, it's gone. Sarah thought for a moment. Then we need to get it tonight. Can you access his cell after hours? Technically yes, but it would be on the security cameras. If anyone reviews the footage, they'll see me removing something from his cell. What if the cameras weren't recording? Jennifer looked at her ex-wife with newfound respect. You're suggesting we disable the security system. I'm suggesting that sometimes the system needs a little technical difficulty. I have a friend who works in digital security. If I can get him the specs for Riverside's camera system, he might be able to create a temporary loop in the footage. You'd have a window of maybe 10 minutes to get in, retrieve the letter, and get out. The cameras would show normal footage, but it would actually be a loop of empty corridors from earlier in the evening. It was risky, possibly illegal, and could destroy both of their careers if they were caught. But it was also the only way to save an innocent man and expose a conspiracy that had been operating for 15 years. "Let's do it," Jennifer said. Sarah's friend came through. By midnight, he had accessed Riverside's security system remotely and identified the window of time when the fewest guards would be on duty. At 2 a.m., the security cameras in cell block D would loop to footage from earlier in the evening, giving Jennifer a 10-minute window to retrieve Foster's letter. Jennifer arrived at the prison at 1:30, using her security clearance to enter during off hours, which wasn't unusual for guards who sometimes needed to file reports or handle paperwork. She made her way to cell block D, her heart racing so fast she thought it might burst from her chest. The corridor was dark, except for emergency lighting, casting everything in an eerie green glow. Jennifer checked her watch. 1:58. 2 minutes until the camera loop activated. At exactly 2 a.m., Sarah sent a text. "Loop active. 10 minutes starting now." Jennifer moved quickly to cell 47. Daniel was asleep, and she didn't wake him. She removed the brick from its hiding spot and pulled out the plastic-wrapped letter. For a moment, she stood there holding evidence that could free an innocent man and expose powerful criminals. Then she tucked it inside her jacket, replaced the brick, and hurried back the way she had come. She made it out of the cell block with 2 minutes to spare. Once safely in her car, Jennifer let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. She had done it. She had the letter. But as she drove away from Riverside, Jennifer noticed headlights following her in the rearview mirror. The car behind her maintained a consistent distance, matching her turns. Her stomach knotted with fear. Someone had seen her, or someone had been watching. She called Sarah. "I've got the letter, but I think someone's following me. Drive to the newspaper office. There are security guards there 24 hours. I'll meet you in the lobby." Jennifer drove straight downtown, the headlights staying with her the entire way. When she pulled into the parking garage of the city newspaper building, the car following her finally broke off and disappeared into the night. Jennifer sat in her car for 5 minutes, making sure it was truly gone, before heading inside. Sarah was waiting in the lobby with 2 security guards. Jennifer handed her the letter, and Sarah immediately took photos of every page before locking the original in the newspaper's secure documents safe. "Tomorrow morning, this story goes to print," Sarah said. "But tonight, you need to stay here where it's safe. If someone was following you, they know you have the letter." Jennifer spent the night on a couch in Sarah's office, sleeping fitfully, jumping at every sound. When dawn broke, she checked her phone and found 17 missed calls from Warden Morrison and a text message that made her blood run cold. "Officer Hayes, report to my office immediately. There has been a serious incident involving inmate Morrison." Jennifer's worst fear had come true. They had gone after Daniel. She raced to the prison, her mind spinning with terrible possibilities. When she burst into the warden's office, she found not only Warden Morrison but also Captain William Reeves and 2 state police officers. "Officer Hayes," the warden said coldly, "you're suspended pending investigation into the theft of evidence and breaking and entering into a prisoner's cell." Captain Reeves stepped forward, his face hard as stone. "We know you took something from Morrison's cell last night. Security footage shows you entering cell block D at 2 a.m. We also know you've been meeting with a journalist, discussing confidential information about Morrison's case. You're in serious trouble, Officer Hayes." Jennifer stood straight, refusing to show fear. "If you have questions about my conduct, I'm happy to answer them. But first, I want to know what happened to Daniel Morrison." The warden exchanged glances with Captain Reeves before answering. "Morrison attempted suicide early this morning. He's in critical condition in the prison hospital." Jennifer felt the floor drop out from under her. "What? How?" "He ingested pills he somehow obtained. We're investigating how he got access to them." But Jennifer knew Daniel hadn't attempted suicide. This was a message, a warning. The people behind the conspiracy were tying up loose ends, and Jennifer was next on their list. "I want a lawyer," Jennifer said firmly. Captain Reeves smiled without warmth. "That's probably wise." As Jennifer was escorted from the building by the state police officers, her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Story going live in 1 hour. Hold on." Jennifer was taken to the police station and placed in an interrogation room. For 3 hours, she was questioned about her actions, about the journalist she had been meeting with, about what she had taken from Morrison's cell. Jennifer refused to answer without her lawyer present. Then at exactly 11 a.m., everything changed. Sarah's story hit the front page of the city newspaper's website and was immediately picked up by national news outlets. The headline read, "15-year conspiracy, police detective's deathbed confession exposes wrongful conviction." The article included photos of Foster's letter, interviews with Michael Chen and retired public defender Kevin Martinez, and a detailed timeline of the Morrison case, showing all the irregularities and manipulated evidence. Within hours, the story had gone viral. Social media exploded with outrage. Civil rights organizations demanded immediate investigations. The FBI announced they were opening an inquiry into the allegations, and most importantly, Daniel Morrison's case was immediately suspended pending review. Captain Reeves and DA Chandler both lawyered up and refused to comment. Congressman Chen released a statement saying he had been unaware of any misconduct in his nephew's case and would cooperate fully with investigators. Jennifer was released from the police station that evening, though she remained under investigation. She went directly to Riverside's hospital wing, where Daniel Morrison was recovering. The suicide attempt, it turned out, hadn't been a suicide attempt at all. Prison staff had found Daniel unconscious, but discovered he had only ingested sleeping pills, not a lethal dose. It seemed Daniel had faked an overdose, possibly knowing that being in the hospital would protect him from being transferred or harmed while the story broke. When Jennifer entered Daniel's hospital room, he was awake, an IV in his arm, but alert and aware. "You did it," he said softly. "You actually did it." "We're not done yet," Jennifer replied. "But yes, the truth is out now." Tears rolled down Daniel's cheeks. 15 years of my life gone. I thought I would die in here. I thought no one would ever believe me." Jennifer pulled a chair close to his bedside. "I believe you. And now the whole world knows what happened to you." Over the following weeks, the case unraveled quickly. The FBI investigation found evidence of widespread corruption involving Captain Reeves, DA Chandler, and 3 other police officers. Marcus Thompson, the guard who had tried to intimidate Jennifer, was arrested for witness tampering and obstruction of justice. It turned out he had been working with Reeves to ensure Daniel never had a chance to present Foster's letter. Michael Chen publicly apologized to Daniel Morrison and testified at the hearings about how he had been pressured into identifying Daniel despite his doubts. The retired public defender, Kevin Martinez, provided documentation showing how he had been deliberately given incomplete information during the original trial. 3 months after Sarah's article was published, Daniel Morrison walked out of Riverside State Penitentiary a free man. His conviction was overturned, and he was awarded a significant settlement from the state. He stood on the prison steps, blinking in the sunlight, surrounded by reporters and cameras. Jennifer was there to meet him. She had been cleared of all charges related to retrieving the letter, with prosecutors acknowledging that her actions, while technically against protocol, had exposed serious crimes and saved an innocent man. However, she had resigned from her position at Riverside, unable to continue working in a system she now viewed with deep skepticism. "What will you do now?" Jennifer asked Daniel as they walked away from the prison for the last time. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I've lost 15 years. I don't have a job, don't have a home, barely know how to use a smartphone, but I'm free. And I owe that freedom to you. You owe it to Detective Foster, for having the courage to write that letter, and to Sarah, for having the skills to investigate and expose the truth. I just did what anyone should have done." Daniel shook his head. "No. Most people would have walked away. Most people would have decided it wasn't worth the risk. You didn't. You put your career, your safety, your entire life on the line for someone you barely knew. That's not something anyone would do. That's something a hero does." Jennifer didn't feel like a hero. She felt exhausted, disillusioned, and uncertain about her future. But she also felt something she hadn't felt in years. The conviction that she had done the right thing, regardless of the cost. Sarah's article about the Morrison case won several journalism awards and led to a larger investigation into wrongful convictions across the state. Dozens of cases were reviewed, and several other inmates were freed after evidence of misconduct was discovered. Captain William Reeves was sentenced to 8 years in prison for corruption, evidence tampering and conspiracy. District Attorney Robert Chandler lost his law license and was sentenced to 5 years. Marcus Thompson received 3 years for his role in the cover-up. 6 months after Daniel's release, Jennifer received a call from a criminal justice reform organization. They were starting a new program to review questionable convictions and needed someone with experience in corrections. Someone who understood how the system worked but wasn't afraid to challenge it when necessary. "We need people who care more about truth than about procedure," the director told Jennifer. "People who are willing to risk something to do what's right. We think you're exactly the kind of person we're looking for." Jennifer accepted the position. It paid less than her job at Riverside had, and came with its own set of challenges and dangers. But for the first time in her career, she felt like she was working for justice rather than just maintaining order. She and Sarah didn't get back together romantically, but they remained close friends and occasional collaborators. Sarah continued investigating corruption and wrongful convictions, and Jennifer provided insights from her experience in the system. They made a good team. As for Daniel Morrison, he slowly rebuilt his life. He found work as an advocate for prisoners' rights, using his experience to help others who had been failed by the justice system. He and Jennifer stayed in touch, meeting for coffee every few weeks to talk about their work and their healing. One evening, nearly a year after Daniel's release, Jennifer sat in her small apartment looking at a letter that had arrived that day. It was from an inmate at Greenville State Prison, a man named Robert Torres, who claimed he was innocent of the murder he had been convicted of 15 years earlier. The letter included specific details about irregularities in his case, and named officials who Torres believed had conspired to convict him. Jennifer read the letter 3 times, feeling the familiar pull of a story that didn't add up, of an injustice that needed to be investigated. She thought about how much easier it would be to ignore the letter, to pass it along to someone else, to protect herself from the risks and complications that would come from getting involved. Then she picked up her phone and called Sarah. "I think we have another case," she said. "Because that's what heroes do. They don't look away from injustice just because it's uncomfortable or dangerous. They don't choose the easy path when the right path is harder. They don't let fear stop them from standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves." Jennifer Hayes had learned that lesson the hard way. She had lost her job, her security, and her faith in the system she had once believed in. But she had gained something more valuable: the knowledge that one person acting with courage and conviction can challenge even the most powerful forces and win. Daniel Morrison had learned it too. He had spent 15 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit, lost some of the best years of his life, and endured injustices that would have broken most people. But he had never given up hope that someday someone would listen. Someone would care enough to risk something for the truth. That someone turned out to be a prison guard who believed people deserved dignity, a journalist who cared more about truth than career advancement, and a detective who found his conscience on his deathbed. Together they had proven that even in a broken system, justice was still possible. The story of Jennifer Hayes and Daniel Morrison spread far beyond that single case. It inspired other prison guards to speak up when they saw injustice. It encouraged journalists to dig deeper into questionable convictions. It reminded lawyers, judges, and police officers that their first duty was to truth, not to winning cases or protecting powerful people. Most importantly, it gave hope to thousands of inmates across the country who had given up believing that anyone cared about their claims of innocence. Because now they knew that somewhere out there were people like Jennifer Hayes who would risk everything to do what was right. 3 years after Daniel's release, Jennifer was invited to speak at a criminal justice reform conference. Standing at the podium, looking out at an audience of lawyers, activists, former inmates, and journalists, she told the story of that October morning when she found Detective Foster's letter. "People ask me if I regret what I did," Jennifer said. "If I regret losing my career at the prison, regret putting myself in danger, regret all the complications that came from deciding to help Daniel Morrison. The answer is no, not for 1 second. Because the alternative would have been to walk away from an innocent man and live the rest of my life, knowing I had chosen comfort over conscience." She paused, looking directly at the audience. "Every day people in positions of authority face choices like the one I faced. They see something wrong, something unjust, something that needs to be challenged. And every day, most of them choose to look the other way. They choose job security over integrity. They choose the approval of powerful people over the lives of powerless people. They choose silence over truth. I'm not saying that choice is easy. It's not. Standing up to power is terrifying. Risking everything you've worked for is terrifying. Going against the system you're part of is terrifying. But you know what's more terrifying? Living with the knowledge that you could have helped someone, and you chose not to. That's a burden that never goes away. The audience gave her a standing ovation, but Jennifer barely noticed. She was looking at the back of the room, where Daniel Morrison stood with tears streaming down his face, applauding. Next to him was Sarah, her camera capturing the moment. And scattered throughout the crowd were dozens of other people whose lives had been changed by the courage of one prison guard who decided that doing the right thing mattered more than doing the safe thing. After the conference, Jennifer, Daniel, and Sarah went to dinner together at the small restaurant Michael Chen owned. Michael had insisted on hosting them, his way of saying thank you to the people who had helped clear Daniel's name and in a way had freed Michael from 15 years of guilt over identifying the wrong man. As they sat around the table, sharing a meal and stories, Jennifer looked at these people who had become her family. A man who had survived 15 years of wrongful imprisonment and emerged with his humanity intact. A journalist who had risked her career to expose corruption. A victim who had found the courage to admit he had been wrong. "Can I propose a toast?" Daniel said, raising his glass. "To Jennifer Hayes, who taught me that there are still people in the world who care more about doing right than about doing well. To Sarah Chen, who proved that the truth matters even when powerful people want it buried. And to Michael Chen, who showed that it's never too late to correct a mistake." They clinked glasses, and for a moment everything felt right with the world. The broken system was still broken, corruption still existed, and thousands of innocent people were still suffering injustices. But in that moment, around that table, there was proof that change was possible, that courage could triumph over fear. That truth could defeat lies. As Jennifer drove home that night, she thought about the letter waiting on her desk from Robert Torres, the inmate at Greenville State Prison. She thought about the investigation she would start tomorrow, the risks she would take, the powerful people she would challenge. And she thought about Detective Richard Foster, who had written a confession letter 3 years before his death, hoping that someone with courage would find it and do what he had been too afraid to do. "Thank you, Detective Foster," Jennifer whispered into the darkness. "You started this. You gave Daniel hope when he had none left. And you reminded me that it's never too late to do the right thing." The next morning, Jennifer called the Criminal Justice Reform Organization and told them about Robert Torres's letter. Within a week she was on her way to Greenville State Prison to meet a man who claimed he was innocent of murder. She didn't know if his claim was true. She didn't know if she would find evidence to help him. She didn't know if this case would be as dangerous as Daniel's had been. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would investigate with everything she had. She would risk what needed to be risked. She would challenge whoever needed to be challenged. Because that's what people do when they decide that justice matters more than comfort, that truth matters more than convenience, and that human dignity matters more than personal safety. Jennifer Hayes had found her calling, not as a prison guard maintaining order in a broken system, but as an advocate fighting to fix that system one case at a time. It was harder work, more dangerous work, and far less secure. But it was the work that mattered. And in the end, isn't that what we all want? To do work that matters. To make choices we can be proud of. To be the kind of person who stands up when it's easier to sit down, who speaks up when it's safer to stay silent, who reaches out when it's more comfortable to look away. The story of Jennifer Hayes and Daniel Morrison is a reminder that heroes don't need capes or superpowers. They just need courage, compassion, and the willingness to pay the price that doing the right thing sometimes requires. They need to believe that one person can make a difference, even when the odds seem impossible. Because sometimes one person is all it takes. One prison guard who decides to read a letter. One journalist who decides to investigate a story. One detective who decides to confess the truth. One victim who decides to admit he was wrong. One person at a time, making one brave choice at a time, until those choices add up to real change. That's the power of individual courage. That's the hope that keeps people like Daniel Morrison believing that justice is possible. And that's the legacy of Jennifer Hayes, a prison guard who discovered that the most important thing she could guard wasn't a cell block or a facility. It was the truth. Dear viewers, This story challenges us to think about the choices we make when faced with injustice. Would you risk everything to help someone you barely knew? Would you stand up to powerful people to defend someone powerless? Would you sacrifice your security for someone else's freedom? Jennifer Hayes answered yes to all those questions. And because she did, an innocent man walked free, a corrupt system was exposed, and the lives of countless others were changed. Her story reminds us that the most ordinary people can do the most extraordinary things when they decide that doing right matters more than anything else. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to Heart Told Stories for more incredible true narratives about courage, compassion, and the power of doing what's right. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that one person can make a difference. And let me know in the comments, what would you have done in Jennifer's situation? Thank you for watching, and remember, the next time you face a choice between what's easy and what's right, think of Jennifer Hayes, think of Daniel Morrison, and choose courage.